Our story opens in 1985 on a night of heavy rain. A young boy sees something he was never meant to see. Four men are carrying a woman's body wrapped inside a rolled-up carpet. Her ankles are visible, and both of them are covered in bracelets. And one of those four men is his own father. The next morning, the boy tells his friend that his dad was just filming a movie scene. Now jump forward 40 years to 2025. This is where we meet Vivek, a criminal investigation officer in Kerala. Right now, he is not exactly a model cop. He has just been suspended for gambling during work hours, and the story made it into the newspapers and onto television. So with nothing but free time, he spends his days helping his father collect tree sap. Vivek is dating a journalist named Serena. When his suspension ends, he gets transferred to Malakkapara, a forest region between Kerala and Tamil Nadu. On that exact same day, somewhere else, a man named Rajendran is quietly running out of time. Years of alcohol have destroyed him. He has already had a liver transplant, and the doctors have told him it is almost over. And for some reason, Rajendran asks his driver to take him to Malakkapara. By pure coincidence, the driver stops to eat at the same roadside spot where Vivek is eating. Their paths split there. Vivek heads to the local police station. Rajendran walks deep into the forest and tells his driver to wait behind. As he pushes through the trees, still clutching his favorite drink, his condition takes a sharp turn and he starts coughing up blood. Eventually, he stops at one specific tree. This is the place he came all this way for, and right there, he opens a live stream on Facebook. He confesses that he spent his whole life chasing money, and it cost him his family, his peace, and his health. But what brought him to this exact spot is a guilt that has followed him for 40 years. Back in 1985, Rajendran was one of four men who carried a body into this forest. He names two of the others: Vincent, who is now a powerful businessman and owns the biggest diamond company in Kerala, and a man named Francis. The fourth man he does not name, because that man is already dead. The body they buried belonged to an 18-year-old girl. Rajendran says he never even knew her name, and she is buried right underneath the spot where he is sitting. Then, with the camera still running, his driver hears a single gunshot. He races into the forest and finds Rajendran dead. This is Rekachithram. The call reaches Vivek, and he arrives at a scene already swarming with media. He updates his superior, Mohandas, and the police chief approves an excavation. Meanwhile, in his luxurious home, Vincent is caring for his critically ill wife when his child shows him the news. A dead man has just dragged his name into a 40-year-old murder. The excavation begins with the press locked out. Hours go by and nothing turns up. Then heavy rain starts pouring, flooding the pit and washing away the top layers of soil. That is when Vivek spots something floating in the muddy water. They drain the pit, dig deeper, and human remains come up, along with a pair of ankle bracelets. Forensics confirms the bones belong to a woman, but the age and identity will take time. Mohandas puts together a special team, and Vivek is assigned to dig into Rajendran's background. Tracking down Francis turns out to be a nightmare. Around the Malakkapara district, there are several men named Francis, all roughly the same age as Rajendran and Vincent, so the police have to visit every single one of them. Vivek meets Rajendran's doctor, Krishna, who confirms the man had been sick for years, was divorced, and had one child. Rajendran's ex-wife gives them nothing useful. One by one, the men named Francis are ruled out. Vivek goes to the last address on the list, and there he only finds Francis's son, who claims his father is out of town for medical treatment. Serena helps out by pulling 1985 newspaper reports about missing girls around 18 years old. The police visit those families and show them the ankle bracelet, and every family says the same thing. It is not their daughters. Then one elderly man with failing memory breaks down crying the moment he sees it. He is certain it belonged to his missing daughter. Vivek takes a DNA sample from him. Next, Vivek visits Vincent's cousin Sibu to learn about Vincent's past. Sibu says that in the mid-1980s, Vincent lived a very hard life, but he was sharp and intelligent. He once stayed at a church and helped out there, and the bishop was so impressed that he paid for Vincent's education. Back then, Vincent moved constantly from city to city. The next day, Vincent is summoned to the station. He shows up with his lawyer and a wall of press. In the interrogation room, Vivek lays out why Rajendran's confession holds weight. As a young man, Vincent lived at a church near Malakkapara, and his old home was only 6 miles from where the remains were found. Vivek then orders the lawyer out of the room, citing the rules against legal company during questioning. Vincent does not flinch. He calmly points out that there is no evidence tying him to anything, and that the police have not even identified the victim. Vivek lets him walk, but he tells himself he is going to find the proof. Then forensics comes back with bad news. The DNA from the elderly man does not match. The poor man was just confused, clinging to a bracelet because he missed his daughter. Vivek keeps digging anyway, and he finds an old report about a missing girl who was never treated as a kidnapping victim. Instead, she was accused of committing fraud and running away. The next morning, he and his team go to the station that filed it and pull the 1985 file out of the archives. The report was submitted by a man named Chandrapan. Chandrapan once worked for the Film Employees Federation as a production supervisor before he was fired. Vivek tracks him down and asks about that report, the one about a girl who supposedly scammed him and vanished. Chandrapan explains that his job was to supply background actors to directors, and he remembers this girl perfectly. She was working on a film called Kataduk Kataram, shot in Malakapara and starring the legendary actor Mammootty. The director had asked Chandrapan to recruit several young women to appear behind Mammootty in a song sequence. Chandrapan gathered a group of girls. Then one of them disappeared after her very first day, even though she had already shot half of her scene. It threw the production into chaos, and the financial manager told Chandrapan to file a police report so the delay would be documented for the auditors. He never saw the girl again, but he never forgot her name. Her name was Rekha. He shows Vivek a still image pulled from that song sequence. 40 years earlier, Rekha stands with the other background actresses in front of the director, and it is obvious she is a massive Mammootty fan. She even asked Chandrapan to help her land a speaking role because she dreams of becoming a famous actress. He turns her down, but tells her this is a decent starting point. She is given the role of a nun in the background, and she is thrilled just to be on set. Back in the present, Vivek now has a name, a face, and a disappearance that happened right next to the burial site. He orders a facial sketch immediately. Around the same time, he finds something else, a phone number that repeatedly called Rajendran in the days before his death, and that number was never used to call anyone else. The cyber team starts tracing the owner. When Rekha's sketch is printed, Vincent's lawyer shows it to him, and Vincent's reaction is instant. He looks shaken. Soon the cyber team identifies the phone owner. For now, they call him Raghav, and his whereabouts are unknown. Vivek visits the company that produced Kataduk Kataram and starts combing through photographs from the shoot. He also watches an old interview with the film's screenwriter, who has since died. In it, the writer casually mentions that one of the actresses dressed as a nun was wearing ankle bracelets on set. That is the confirmation Vivek needed. The remains are almost certainly Rekha. The next morning, he meets the film's former assistant director, who sees the photo and the sketch and remembers only one thing. Rekha vanished suddenly and wrecked the shooting schedule. Meanwhile, Vincent starts fighting back. On his orders, his lawyer visits the chief minister's residence with a blunt message. Use political power to shut down Vivek's investigation, or Vincent will expose the scandals of the chief minister and everyone around him. The chief minister has no choice but to cooperate, and Vincent does not stop there. He hires men to kill Chandrapan. Knowing his weakness, they get him drunk, kill him, and dump his body in a drain. Right on cue, Mohandas passes along new orders from above. The remains case is handed to the crime branch, and Vivek is reassigned to traffic duty. Vivek just smiles because he knows exactly whose hand is behind this, and he decides to keep investigating in secret. Chandrapan's death is ruled an accident, a drunk man falling into a drain, and the remains are hauled away by a so-called research team whose arrogance makes it obvious they are corrupt officers on Vincent's payroll. So now Vivek is off the case, his key informant is dead, and the strongest piece of evidence is gone. He still refuses to stop. Then the assistant director calls him again with a lead. During filming, a reporter named Suresh covered the production, and he might still have something. Vivek goes to meet him. Suresh remembers interviewing Mammootty on that shoot, and the actor got irritated by his questions and walked off. Suresh still has the 1985 magazine that covered the incident, and in those photos, Rekha is clearly visible. But Vivek notices something else. The woman standing right next to Rekha is not an extra. She is an actual nun, easy to spot from her habit. Her name is Anitha. Vivek tracks her down at a church, and she confirms it. She knew Rekha in 1985. Back in that year, the film set was located right beside the church and convent, where Anitha lived with the other nuns. The moment Mammootty arrived, excitement spread everywhere. In the chaos, Rekha's costume gets torn, so she rushes to the convent to borrow a nun's outfit. That is where she meets Anitha, who is hanging laundry. Anitha agrees to lend her the clothes on one condition. Rekha has to arrange a meeting between Anitha and Mammootty. Rekha, who is a huge fan herself, agrees just to get the outfit. Later, she has to admit the truth, that she is only a background actress with no power to set that up. Anitha takes it fine. She is happy just to see the set. A costume worker soon asks Rekha to change back once her torn outfit is stitched up. She and Anitha keep talking, and together they watch Mammootty snap at Suresh during that interview, thrilled to see their favorite actor up close. That night, filming for the song sequence begins, but heavy rain shuts everything down. Rather than let Rekha sleep in cramped conditions with the other extras, Anitha invites her to stay at the convent. There, Rekha meets the nuns, along with a helper named Lakshmi, who lives at the convent with her husband Shankaran and their young son. At dinner, Rekha refuses the meat curry made by another helper named Pushpam because she does not eat beef. After dinner, Anitha walks her to her room. By morning, everything has changed. The nuns discover that donation money has been stolen from the office, and Rekha is gone. Suspicion falls immediately on her, and Anitha gets blamed too, for bringing a stranger into the convent. Anitha never sees Rekha again. Hearing all this, Vivek starts to wonder if Rekha really was just a thief. Meanwhile, Vincent is rushing his wife to the hospital as her condition gets worse. His lawyer informs him that Vivek is still digging and that he has now spoken to a nun. The next morning, Vivek goes back to Anitha and asks about everyone who was at the convent that night. Most of the nuns have died, and the rest moved away. Lakshmi and Shankaran are gone, and Pushpam left about 4 months after the incident, supposedly because she could not stand the head nun's strict rules. Nobody knows where she went, but Anitha gives him one crucial detail. Lakshmi's son is still alive and living in a nearby village. And when she writes down the address, something clicks. It matches the traced address of the man who kept calling Rajendran. Raghav is Lakshmi and Shankaran's son. Vivek heads straight there, and he also asks Serena for a favor. He wants her to revive Rekha's story in the newspaper by interviewing Anitha and the assistant director, hoping it draws out anyone who knows who Rekha really was. At Raghav's house, Vivek forces his way in. Raghav and his friend try to jump him and get overpowered fast. And then Raghav admits it. He had been calling Rajendran to blackmail him, threatening to expose his past, and now the pieces snap together. Raghav is the little boy from the opening of our story, the one who watched his father Shankaran carry a body through the rain with 3 other men. When he asked about it, Shankaran told him it was just a movie scene. Raghav believed it, and even told his friend his father was acting in a film. But when the movie came out, that scene was nowhere in it. Then just weeks ago, Shankaran, critically ill, finally confessed. Back in 1985, he was paid to help carry the body of a young girl, and he swore he never knew who she was. He also gave up the names of the other 3 men, Rajendran, Francis, and a man called Vakachan. Raghav and his friend only recognized Rajendran, so they decided to squeeze him for money. This is gold for Vivek. He tells the 2 of them he will be back to bring them in so their testimony can be officially recorded. He reports everything to Mohandas. Raghav witnessed 4 men carrying a young woman's body in 1985. The girl was almost certainly Rekha because of the ankle bracelets, and the man Shankaran knew as Vakachan is Vincent. Even though the investigation is officially dead, Mohandas promises to get permission from the police chief to bring Raghav in. But the next morning, Vivek arrives too late. Raghav is found hanging, and his friend is pulled out of a river. Vincent has silenced them both and staged it as suicide. 2 more witnesses gone. That night, going through the old filming photos again, Vivek catches a detail he missed. One man in the background has a damaged left eye, and at the last house on the Francis list, the son he met had the exact same eye condition. That is the confirmation. The man in the photo is Francis, and the defect was passed down to his son. Unfortunately, Vincent's lawyer spots the same thing, and Vincent recognizes Francis instantly. The next day, Vivek goes back, and this time Francis is home. Shown the photograph, he denies everything and claims he never worked on that film set. Vivek does not push. He lays out what happened to Rekha, then points out that every witness connected to this case has ended up dead. Francis could easily be next, but if he tells the truth, the police will protect him, and Francis finally breaks. He admits he helped bury the body of a woman whose name he never knew. Then he tells the whole story, right from the beginning. It started when Vincent, then known as Vakachan, came to the church to help the bishop. At the same time, Pushpin was working as a helper at the convent, and since she also cleaned the bishop's residence, the 2 of them got to know each other. One day, Pushpam caught Vincent stealing donation money from the bishop's office. Instead of reporting him, she took hush money. Vincent told her he needed the cash to leave and build a better life somewhere else. Push Pam agreed to stay quiet, but on one condition. She was coming with him. So the two of them started stealing food supplies and spices whenever nobody was watching and selling them off. Before long, Shankaran caught them, but instead of exposing them, he joined in for a cut. Vincent and Pushpam grew closer and eventually became lovers. Then Pushpam noticed where the convent kept its donation money and its gold. She suggested they take all of it so they could build up their savings fast, and that is where the real plan began. First, Pushpam placed a dead rat near the storage cabinet, knowing the nuns would ask her to clean that area the next morning. While cleaning, she pressed the cabinet key into a bar of soap to make a copy. Then filming for Kataduk Katorum began. As luck would have it, several nuns were away on a spiritual retreat, and that evening, Anitha announced that her new friend Rekha would be staying overnight. Pushpam overheard it from the kitchen, and a cruel idea formed. She would frame Rekha and Anitha for the theft. Without a scapegoat, her own disappearance with Vincent would raise far too many questions. Meanwhile, Francis, who was always around the filming location, kept noticing Vincent and Shankaran driving back and forth in a jeep, clearly up to something. That night, Pushpam mixed sleeping pills into the meat curry, and Rekha refused the food because she does not eat beef. That one small detail destroyed the entire plan. So later, once everyone else was asleep, Pushpam killed Rekha herself. Vincent was stunned when he saw the body, but Pushpam told him there was no turning back. The girl had to be buried immediately. With Rekha gone, they could take the money and gold, and the nuns would simply blame her for the theft. Around then, Francis and Rajendran spotted the jeep and went over to see what Vincent was doing. They found a dead woman. Shankaran turned on them, warning that their names would be tied to the crime if they said a word. With no way out, and with money on the table, they agreed to help. Rekha's body was wrapped in a mat and driven deep into the forest. And here is the most horrifying part of the whole film. Rekha was still alive. Her legs were moving under the covering as they carried her. They buried her anyway.
Close it.
Francis knew every detail because Vincent and Shankaran told him afterward. Then the four of them scattered and never met again. Years later, watching Rajendran's live stream, Francis finally realized that the man he once knew as Vakachan was now the businessman called Vincent. Francis never learned the girl's name, but her face stayed with him for 40 years. So when Vivek shows him the photograph, he recognizes her instantly. And now Vivek understands the full picture. Vakachan changed his name to Vincent to erase his past, and Pushpam did exactly the same thing. She took a new identity, calling herself Alice. Alice is Vincent's wife. The next morning, Vivek makes a bold move. He sends flowers to Alice's hospital room with a note that reads, "Get well soon, Pushpam. Alice can barely breathe." Vincent frantically tries to find out who sent them, looks up and sees Vivek standing outside, staring straight at him. In that moment, Vincent knows his secrets are gone, and real fear finally hits him. Vivek takes everything to the police chief with Mohandas backing him. But the chief points out the fatal flaw. The remains have still not been legally identified as Rekha. Without that, they will lose in court against a man as powerful as Vincent. Vivek has to find Rekha's real background and her family. Meanwhile, from her hospital bed, Alice tells Vincent to silence Vivek permanently. Vincent arranges a hit and run. It nearly works. Vivek is rushed to the hospital and barely survives. A few days later, he wakes up, and Mohandas tells him the police chief has forwarded his report to the central authorities. The case is now national news, but they still have to prove who Rekha was. At that exact moment, Serena gets a call from an actor named Jagadish, who read about the case and has something to share. Jagadish explains that his first film, released in 1984, was a big hit. After watching it, a girl named Rekha sent him a letter praising his performance. It was the first fan letter he ever received, so he wrote back. They exchanged letters for about a year. Through them, he learned she was a devoted Mammootty fan who dreamed of becoming an actress. Then one day, she simply stopped writing, and that first letter left such a mark on him that he still remembers the return address. A house called KJ in the small town of Kanyakumari in Tamil Nadu. Vivek and Serena drive to Kanyakumari and start asking locals about a house named KJ. Eventually, they are led to Rekha's younger sister, Asha, who looks strikingly like her. Asha says the family moved there in 1982 into a house right next to a cassette shop. The two sisters grew up watching movies together, and that is where Rekha's dream was born. She worshipped Mammootty so much that she memorized his lines by heart. Then one day she had a huge fight with their father and ran away from home. She never came back. Even after both parents died, Asha stayed in that house, hoping her sister would come back. That hope ends when Vivek places Rekha's ankle bracelet in her hands. Elsewhere, Mohandas meets Vincent's son and tells him the truth about his mother's real identity and the crime she committed. The boy is crushed, and he turns on both of his parents. By now, the newspapers are already printing their names, and Vincent makes one final monstrous decision. Terrified that Alice will suffer and die behind bars, he suffocates her himself, convinced he is sparing her from something worse. At the same time, the police uncover the bribery scheme and expose the chief minister, who had been taking Vincent's money for years. Then DNA samples are taken from Asha and from her parents' remains and compared against the skeleton. It is a match. The remains are Rekha. Every piece finally locks into place and the police arrest Vincent at his home. He is convicted and sentenced to prison. A few days later, Jagadish tells Vivek that Mammootty himself wants to meet him. Rekha is finally laid to rest properly in the city with Anitha at the funeral. And afterward, Vivek hands Asha a photograph of a young Mammootty, signed and dedicated to Rekha. The woman who adored him her entire life only gets his recognition after her death. And the film closes on one last reveal. Rekha did not run away from home for nothing. She left to chase a dream after seeing a magazine announcement that Mammootty was searching for a leading actress.